Welcome to Riot Monkey Radio. I am Michael Donahue. I am here with,
Dan Shea.
and we are going to discuss all kinds of nerdy goodness, cinema mainly, and yeah, we'll see what else happens.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for having me.
So, you and I met at Shriekfest, and you won Best Short Screenplay, yes, this year?
Nonsense. I won Best Feature Screenplay.
Feature. Oh, well, I do apologize.
That's right.
So, do you want to talk some about that?
Yeah, sure. I just glanced over here because my trophy's hiding somewhere over there on the shelf.
It's an impressive trophy.
It's a murder object.
Isn't it?
It weighs
They're so
about
much heavier than they look. I know everybody says that about every award, but it really is heavy.
yeah. It's got the blood on it, so yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah. So the script I won for, it's called No Child Left Behind. It's a period horror. It takes place kind of the turn of the century in like an abandoned New England vast estate, where every year a secret society of teachers has a ritualistic hunt of students.
Okay.
Yeah, and so and then and it's in the very Victorian tradition of fox hunting, so they get all dressed up and the horns are blowing, but instead of foxhounds, they have children that are feral, that they keep feral and kind of quasi lobotomize, so they can keep them in this animalistic state. And the kids are actually the ones that are the dogs that go out and chase down the prey. And so this is a story about, and so this is a story about there's like 3 kids each year that get hunted, and one of the kids kind of fights back.
Naturally.
Yeah, naturally. And it's sort of the way it was optioned for a while. The way we were pitching it was it's sort of the death of the 1%, because the kid comes back and just sort of lays waste to the entire establishment.
That's right on. I'm very into this.
Yeah.
So you said it was optioned for a while. Is anything happening with it right now, or what?
No, it's one of the things I've got a couple of scripts my agents are kind of focusing on this year, and that's one of them. It was optioned with K5 out of Berlin, really great production company. I think what happened, when the hunt kind of went, kind of, when they pulled the hunt, it was kind of right when they were starting to get out and go out with it. And so I think that's, they didn't say that, but I think the timing was pretty coincidental. And so I think they just they got cold feet a little bit.
Yeah, timing can really like be the best thing possible, or absolutely shoot you in the foot, man. Like, have you ever seen Boondock Saints?
I have not.
Long story short, like it was done, edited, and about to come out before Columbine, and it had an industry screening like days after Columbine, and it just got cut to like the too much violence, too many guns, too much this, too much that, didn't get properly released in the United States, blah blah blah. So yeah, I mean I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, but on the timing thing, so on the other hand, Dreamcatcher that came out, that dropped digitally in April, kind of hit the perfect time for people streaming. It was like perfect for us, because we had a captive audience of tens of millions of people who couldn't go out of their house, and so we did really, really well because of that. So
that's awesome, man.
Thanks, COVID.
Right. Oh man.
But anyway, so we're hopefully we're looking. We still have people requesting it and still shopping it around, and it's still dope, and it's still so much. I haven't seen The Hunt.
I was gonna ask. I did see The Hunt. If you want to talk about it.
I've just read the synopsis and I've read a lot of reviews on it, and I feel like mine has more depth. There's actually a thing to it that's
honestly just based on your synopsis. I'm probably going to agree with you, at least in terms of the story. You know what I mean? Man?
Yeah, I mean the lead is like this 16-year-old African American girl. It's the otherism of the kids that gets them in trouble. So the loudmouth black girl in 1905, in a public school, or another one of the kids is this huge Native American young man who's like a man child. They used to just
I get you.
Back in the late 1800s, just take these kids from their families. They actually had a saying, kill the savage to save the man. And so they would take them out of their family and basically raise them in schools as white children, making them forget all their heritage and all that kind of stuff. So he's another one of the kids. And then there's a gay girl in it, who was, because of her sexual preference was deemed, as an other and an outsider. And so there's a lot of that stuff that's layered into it as well.
Do you want to have any involvement beyond like selling the script? Like, do you want to be involved with the director while he's making it so that you can have input on how you see it in your brain, or what? How do you see the production in your perfect view go?
Of this particular script?
Yeah.
Yeah. In my dream world, it gets a $15 million budget, and I stay out of the way.
Okay. All right.
It's financed properly, and we get a director who appreciates the material for what it is. As a writer, it's really tempting to say, God, I can't remember who the writer is. It's this great quote, though. He's like, you don't have to envision it for me. I envisioned it fucking for you. It's on the page. Just do what I put on the page, So it's tempting to want to say that, but having just gone through that process with Dreamcatcher, I realized when I got to set, I was the least important person in the universe once the camera started rolling, and not that they did.
I've heard that in film. It's like the writer, like once they create everything that everybody's working on, they may as well not exist. But in television, it's like the flip. Television,
and then I have a pretty extensive background in theater. In theater, the word is sacrosanct, right? You write a play, and they can't change punctuation.
Right. Yeah.
But with film, it's more like you're writing a sort of invitation for other people to help create something. Is kind of how I've come to rationalize the process. And the thing is, like with we had really the cast. We had Rhoda Mitchell, Lynn Shea, and Henry Thomas. Right? And then Jules Wilcox, who's a tremendous actress, and then Finn, I can't think of his name, the little kid who's an amazing actor too. I'll roll the dice with them playing with my dialogue, because when I look at what I wrote and what they said, I'm like, yeah, it's probably a better choice,
Okay.
So
that's always nice. That's what you want. You don't want to be like, what are you doing? If you had it in your brain and they managed to deliver better, like, good on them.
I think there's a couple of times where I was like, but my pretty line. Where did it go? But I think overall I was like super pleased.
Shriekfest is special to me for like, when I got there, I expected to have a good time, but I didn't know how well I would like blend, if you will. I know I can talk because I'm me. When I started to have conversations on like what I considered like an artistic level, it was most akin to being home. Like, I work at a Renaissance fair, and like that's the most community like familial thing that I can imagine. And this is totally a Renaissance fair style atmosphere, just horror and film. And I was like, whoa, so, like, people that actually do this are cool with the way that I speak and am. Oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I didn't really know what to expect, and looking back on it, I really regret not, like, I was just so like wallflowerish, And the thing is, I'm a pretty gregarious guy, and I love talking shop, and I love talking movies and stuff, but I don't know anybody, and I'll just stand over here and like pretend to eat something at the table, and then I'll leave it when it's appropriate.
Right. Yeah. That's like. So the way I love the idea of a party, and I say it like that because it was a couple of years ago for the red carpet at Street Fest. Like, I had a great time on the red carpet, and I'm like, party, because I finally had like a ride home after the party, and I got into the party and I was having a good time. And about 6 minutes into walking around, I was, get me out of here. She's like, I don't know anybody. And then thankfully, as I was beelining for the door, I fell into a conversation that just brought me to life for like the next hour. I was like, okay, no, we're good. Oh, we're good.
The only real good conversation I had was Well, I don't want to say only good. I talked to some people, but I talked to Brian Avanet,
Yeah,
hyphen something.
Bradley, I believe. Yeah.
Uh, it was just so cool because I felt like he had read a couple of my other scripts before. I have a script called Killdeer and one called Butcher Holler, which, right, I mean, just Butcher Holler. It's an Appalachian folk horror kind of thing.
Okay.
And anyway, I don't know if I had known who he was or I knew he had read my scripts. I think maybe I knew he had read them and I knew he was going to be there. And so I said, hey, Brian, my name's Dan Shea. And before I could get another word out, he like grabbed my hand when he was talking to some people. He goes, Dan Shea, you wrote Killdeer and Butcher Holler. Guys, this guy has written the greatest fucking script. And I was just like, oh my God, where have you been the last 3 nights? Because I would have just like hung around with people all the time. But
he's a good dude. He's a good dude.
He was lovely. He was a good dude. Yeah. And through him kind of met Trista, who was kind of hanging around his shadow there.
Yeah, no, she's really cool too. Actually, in a weird happenstance. So Brian made that movie Ghost of the Needle, which I stumbled upon, like, I guess shortly after it came out. And I'm one of the few people in the country that's not only seen it but own it. It's over here somewhere, so I keep looking away. And Trista was in the very first movie that I worked on.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was really interesting. So that all that came together,
Yeah. I was kind of wishing, thinking back on it, like I wish they would do the awards the first night, because then I could like walk around with my trophy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then people come up and talk to you.
Right. Yeah.
The same thing. Not to be like all braggy. I won Austin one year, Austin Film Fest. I won.
Okay.
And the exact same thing happened. I spent 4 days not talking to anybody and staying in the back of the room, and then I walk around with my trophy through the hotel bar at the Driscoll, and everybody comes up to me, and I'm like, next year just show up with a trophy. Just put it on the table and wait for people to come talk to you.
You're like, I have one of these. Have you watched anything as of late that really caught your attention for any reason, be it was amazing or I can't believe this got made?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff. We just been like, it's been catching stuff on, like this last night I watched The Good Liar with Helen Mirren and Ian McKellen.
How was that? I was really curious. I haven't watched it yet.
Really, really good. I mean,
it looked good, yeah.
You kind of see the end coming, but you don't kind of see it in the way that it comes. But there's some really great knockdown, drag out scenes between those. It's just fun to watch two extraordinary actors do their shit, and they're just so good at what they do. And Ian McKellen especially, because he's playing a con man, and to watch him turn from charming, kind of bumbling little con man, and you just kind of fall in, and Helen Mirren's falling in love with him. And the minute she leaves the room, cold, calculated, how can I steal her $2.7 million?
There it is.
It's so good.
I'm in.
I watch a lot of noir stuff too, because I have TCM, and so I just like watch every noir, all the 1940s stuff. Just some of the writing is just so good and so spot on, and the dialogue is crisp, and it's you're watching. It's kind of cool to watch stuff where
I've got that Touch of Evil Blu-ray that's got like all 3 cuts.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah.
It's
cool to watch stuff like, I don't know, like Raw Deal or something. But like now we know all the references of noir. They were making it up. You're watching the movies that created the form, and it's just cool to see. It's not like they weren't working off anything. They were like, well, we've got a Hays Code or whatever we got to work around. We can't show sex, so show cigarette burning. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Even quieter. Like there's a Bogart movie called In a Lonely Place. It's about a screenwriter.
I know of it, but I have not seen it yet.
It might be my favorite noir movie,
Okay.
And then and they just watch it, watching Bogey and watching like Gloria Graham and I don't know, Van Heflin and these I just fall in love with these guys.
Well, like with Bogey and Bacall, everybody goes Casablanca, but to me, any day of the week, I'll take To Have and Have Not.
Yeah,
I love To Have and Have Not.
I love Casablanca too. I just watched it.
No, Casablanca's great. I'm not talking like nonsense like Casablanca. But.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we have some beautiful actresses and some beautiful actors, but just the way they shot them back then, the way they sort of honored their face, it's just a different thing sometimes. I sound like somebody's great grandfather right now, but
like, no joke, people have told me I'm an old soul since I was like 5 years old, so it's no big deal.
yeah. You know what is a good movie though? We just watched the other night, Trumbo with Bryan Cranston.
That's another one I missed.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what this time is for. That's what that's what they did back in the original Black Plague. They caught up on all their Netflix queue.
Of course.
Yeah. So now's the time to do it.
Yeah, it's just like I just love how everybody's like, oh man, I don't know what to binge next, and it's like when the world is granting nothing but free entertainment access, where like I think like Broadway and somewhere in England, like they're putting up like plays.
Oh yeah, the national
for like a week run on YouTube and stuff, and I'm like, this is amazing, but I never have the time to watch any of it now.
Yeah, I missed shit. They had it, the National Theater, or I think had Benedict Cumberbatch and what's his name, Johnny Miller.
Johnny Lee Miller, that guy.
Yeah, it's doing Frankenstein, the play, and switching, and I think it was directed by Danny Boyle, I think. And
of course,
like every week, every performance or every 2 performances, they traded roles.
That's awesome.
One would be the monster, and one would be Frankenstein.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And like Frankenstein's one of those things that like, you're forced to read in high school, but like I love that book, and I love a lot of the interpretations of it in cinema as well. But like, I don't know what I thought the book would be by the time that I got to it in high school, because like I don't even think I had actually seen the entirety of the OG Frankenstein at the time. I just like was familiar with its imagery and some of the scenes. But the fact that entire narrative is back and forth letters,
I've
proper never term for which I forget right now. Correspondence. The whole thing is in correspondence. It's just like, this is amazing.
Yeah, and I don't know if I've watched all the. I mean, I've also gotten in the last few years a real great appreciation for Boris Karloff. He's actually a really good actor, not just going by like, Frankenstein or something. But there's this good movie, Isle of the Dead, in the early 20th century, like in Greece or somewhere like that, during some wartime, some war, and they're on an island, but they're on the mainland. There's like a tuberculosis outbreak or something, and so nobody's allowed to leave the island.
Okay.
And on this island is a vampire, but I think they call her a Barvuka or Barvalka or something like that is the Greek name for it. Okay. But she's a vampire. So you've got 10 people stuck on an island with a Barvalka. And it's just perfectly natural, organic setup for a horror movie. And Boris Karloff's in it. He's like a general and he just gives a really great performance. And it's just cool. It'd be a great, simple thing to reboot.
In a budgetary minded environment, you could keep that pretty low.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I feel like I spend half my time is like looking for things that we can, option or, whatever and do cheap. And it's like, so like Dreamcatcher, when I was working on that, it was like, can't do that, too expensive, can't do that, too expensive, can't do that too. And so it's, and so it's just like, so you get used to writing so small in a way, or you have to learn to write big in a small way. And by that, like you try to write more like character depth and layers and metaphors and that kind of stuff. I have an MFA in playwriting, and I know a lot of us when we were writing our plays or after we graduated writing plays, it's always like, lights up on a bare stage in a chair, and it's like, because I want to make sure theaters want to do, cast list 3 people, and you get used to writing kind of small. And so it's when you get a chance to like spread your wings and write something bigger, you got to like, hey, let's pretend you have a $30 million budget or whatever, and you're not shackled by it. So, but yeah, but it remains true if you want to get produced, write something that can be done for $300,000.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of the magic number.
So like, in a me nerdy kind of way, like, do you do research on like how much this movie cost and what cost most, so that while you're maybe even while you're writing or after you're writing, you're like, you can figure out what you think the budget would or should be. Did that make sense?
I'm not smart enough to do that, and I don't, I have written things where I've sent to friends who have either have done some line producing, or they've read other scripts that have been line produced, and so they kind of have a way, they kind of have an internal, calculator, and so I'll say, hey, for instance, Killdeer, I wrote this script called Killdeer. I thought I wrote a $300,000 or $400,000 script, and it was optioned for a while, and they're like, no, this is 1.5, easy.
Oh, okay.
It's like, why? And they said, well, you have a house that's flooding.
Oh, well, yeah.
You have, the final scene is this kind of evil stepmother and her 2 children that she's going to murder. They're in a truck, and they fly off the dock into the pond, and the truck sinks, and they're like, that's several days.
Yeah.
And I just don't, I didn't even think of that kind of stuff. I'm like, what? It takes place, the script, it's 1 page.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just don't, I think I'm getting better at that kind of stuff, but yeah, I was completely naive. We're going to pitch a sequel to Dreamcatcher, since it did pretty well, streaming and stuff. So, we were trying to open it up a bit, and, maybe have this set piece where they go to Europe and kind of hunt for the origin of the Dreamcatcher kind of thing. And at the last minute, we're like, we'll make it a dream sequence. It's a nightmare, and they wake up, kind of thing. Okay. So they don't actually go over to Europe, because we're thinking, like, are they really going to pay to, send a crew to Europe and do that, so probably not. So let's just kind of keep it a little more contained.
You said you had an MFA in playwriting. Like, so who are some of your favorite both stage play and screenplay writers?
Well, for a while, I think like every male writer, like Mamet and Pinter, initially.
I love Mamet.
Yeah, initially, you get really jazzed by the rhythm of the language, and so from there, as screenwriters, you probably get turned on to Aaron Sorkin, who's very much that same school. But honestly, my bigger influences are like Paula Vogel, How I Learned to Drive, Baltimore Waltz kind of stuff. Magic realism writers.
Okay. Yeah.
So like my favorite movie now is probably Birdman.
Oh, I love Birdman. Birdman.
I remember.
I wish like so many people like talk about how it's amazing that it's one shot. I'm like, it's married, but like,
watching those things, how what's his name, Chivo Lubeski, I think the cinematographer, the technique he uses in, I saw there's a few things on YouTube where they break down his technique in like that scene where Michael Keaton gets locked out of the theater and he has to go out into Times Square in his underwear.
Yeah.
And just those shots where he looks down at a puddle of water, steps in it, comes back up. That's a new shot. And just and they do the same thing when he did The Revenant. A lot of similar techniques in marrying super shots to get like these big long shots where it's actually but anyway,
buddy of mine got to talk to him, and apparently like the scene where he goes over the cliff, like just from like just before that starts to just at the end of that scene, that's like 5 or 6 married shots somehow
from different places.
Exactly. Yeah.
One's a river in South Dakota, one's a river in Mexico, another one's up in Vancouver or something. But I remember when Birdman came out, and a friend of mine, he was an English professor. I used to be a professor. He was one of my buddies. Right, and I was having lunch with him. I was like, "Oh my God, I just saw Birdman. I love it." And he says, "Of course you love it. You wrote it." He's read everything that I've written, and he's like, "It's you." It's like right up the kind of alley that you like to reside in. So yeah, it ticks all the boxes for me.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% there, man. Like I couldn't have been
magic realism
happier with that result. Yeah.
Just stunning. You watch it or read the script and like look at my hands. I'm like, you're stupid. You're stupid.
You're like, why can't you ever be that good?
Yeah. Like when I watched Arrival, same thing happened when I saw Arrival. that movie moved me so much. I bawled like a baby in that movie. And then, did you see it?
I did. I had a very interesting experience. You go ahead, be effusive, and then we'll talk.
Well, I know I saw it with my daughter and her boyfriend, and 5 minutes in, the boyfriend turned to my daughter, told her the ending. Like
What?
Yeah, he like.
Okay, see, that's my problem. All right, so because you went here, I'm gonna take over for a second.
Yeah, go.
So my issue here was I really wanted to see it, and then all of a sudden, all this buzz started to happen. And I was really busy. I couldn't get to the theater, and I don't think I had A-list at the time, so I couldn't really justify the cost of going to the theater. And I'm like, oh, I really need to see this movie. And everybody that came in, they're like, you haven't seen it? You got to go see it. It's not what you think it's about. It's so not what you. I can't tell you how many times someone told me it's not what you think it's about. So when I finally got to see it,
it's almost impossible to have a pure movie going experience.
Now, yeah, that's why I so genuinely love them when I get them.
I see a title, like if I saw, so I'll give you an example, Ari Aster, Midsummer, immediately blocked Midsummer on Twitter, immediately blocked it everywhere. I shut people up the minute I heard them saying, no. Yeah. Yeah, and I was able to have a pure experience, but it's almost impossible. But anyway, with Arrival, it affected me in such, because I have a daughter, and so so for the people listening in a non-spoiler way, if you have children, that movie's going to mean something a little extra to you. But I saw the movie and lost my mind over it, and so then I read the screenplay.
Okay.
And lost my mind again, and then cried, and then I read the short story by I'm going to say Michael Chang maybe or something like that, and cried again. It's just beautiful. The cool thing though, because a lot of times what I try to do when I see a movie that I really like that was based on something, I try to read the source material,
right? So
I can see what decisions they made and what choices they made to get to where they. And he made some pretty significant changes from the short story, but every change he made was the exact right decision. It's amazing. Yeah,
you got to appreciate it when it's that versus what it could have been.
Yeah, and there's Chuck Klosterman, his podcast. He was interviewing Eric Heiser, who wrote the script, and Heiser was there's that scene when what's her butt is explaining, Amy Ryan's explaining. I can't, if I write this on the chalkboard, this could mean 500 different things.
Yeah.
Right. And so in the script, in his original script, that was a 10-minute long scene because he was getting into linguistic theory and whatever. It's kind of awesome. The producers had said something to him like, no, explain it to me like I'm dumb. And so then Eric Heiser wrote that sentence on the board and said, well, it's like this. If I wrote this sentence, it could mean this, it could mean this, it could mean that. And they went, there, that's your scene. That 10-page scene is now 30 seconds. Or whatever.
Interestingly, I have a story that kind of ties into this. So a bunch of years ago, one of the regulars at the Barnes & Noble I used to work at knew how into cinema I was trying to get into some like la-di-da type culinary school. And they had to make a video, and that was the only parameter they had to make a video. And so she was like, if I give you like $200, do you think you could like direct something for me? Like I'll get like I got the actors, I got the location, I got everything. Do you think you could do something for me? I was like, yeah. And so she's like, all right, it has to be under. It was like 2 minutes or something. And what I gave her was like a minute 59:59. You know what I mean? And and part of it was she was like, okay, so I've got like these 3 scenes and it goes like this, and then in between the scenes I need this information to be put on the screen somehow. And what she gave me for the information on the screen was like 3 pages. And I was like, you don't know how this works, do you? But I managed to actually cut everything that she needed to say down in such a way that she was like, oh yeah, no, that works. And still like make it work. So like, yeah.
So what about you? So what are your like go-to like horror movies?
So I'm a little all over the place, but I'm actually one of the people that like didn't get The Exorcist until very, very recently, because the first time I watched it was when I was just delving into cinema. I was raised very, very Catholic, so I knew it was this thing, and everything that was supposed to get me, I was just interested or confused by. I was like, I didn't find it scary. I didn't find it offensive. I like the Pazuzu stuff. That's the demon's name, right? Where it's just like one flash of a scene. You know, it's like some people get really like freaked out by that. I'm like, what is that? I'm pausing it, trying to see what's going on, and I just didn't get it. And then cut to last year, they did a screening of the fourth restoration at the New Art here in Santa Monica, and like the '70s is like my favorite era of cinema. Period. Dash. That's a long conversation we could have, but. So, but like at the time, it was just an old movie. So when I finally got to see, you know, the restoration was just so gorgeous, and like seeing it with a crowd late at night, you know, it was perfect. And like and it finally worked on me the way it needed to work on me, where instead of trying to get scared or trying to see what the offense was, I just let the movie be the movie and see these two completely disparate stories come together in this amazing fashion. And I mean, I would definitely like if I could get a screen grab and like a blow up for like a painting size image of them having that conversation at the dinner table where you can see the whole house. I mean, come on, man. Like it's just amazing. Yeah. But like sort of like go-to stuff for me would be like recently The Witch, The Lighthouse. I love Eggers. I love this man so far. Like
Lighthouse, you know.
Well, I mean, like I get it's not for everybody, but the way that The Witch worked on me, because like, okay, so raised Catholic, work at a Renaissance fair. They get kicked out of their town for being too religious. Not that Catholic, but pretty Catholic. You know, like the tongue, I had no issue with the language. They go hunting with a matchlock musket. When I'm at the Renaissance fair, I'm in the company of shot. I use a matchlock musket. Everything about this movie is like, here you go, Michael. It's all for you. And it just worked.
And a badass.
And I was afraid that I mean, come on, Black Phillip. If you haven't seen The Witch, shame on you, but also we won't spoil it. But Black Phillip is one of the greatest things that's ever happened.
Yeah, I want to do one like that. I've got this idea that if I ever get some time, I want to call it This Little Piggy, right? Okay. And I want it to be the origin story of this little piggy who went to the market. So it's set in sort of a similar time period, but it's going to be like this witch, or she's actually just more of like a holistic granola head who lives out in the woods, right? But she sleeps with the town parson or whatever and gets pregnant, and then he disowns her, and so she calls upon Satan to help her exact her revenge, and so she gives birth to a pig, to like this hog, and the hog helps her exact her revenge on the townspeople.
This is awesome. If I had money, I would give it to you right now, and we would make sure that this would be a practical thing.
Right. And the practical effect of the birthing scene is going to be what people would talk about. Get Rick Baker in and just do everything. I remember in college, I was at the cinema on the campus was showing Heavy Metal, which was this.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And a guy a few seats down from me was tripping on LSD watching Heavy Metal. He was losing his mind. Yeah, I need to get out more because I might have a drink, but
okay.
Yeah, I'll have to come out to LA.
Yeah. But no, oh man, like that stuff. Okay, so like talking about the whole like this, a similar experience. The first one that I can point to is actually Contagion. So
okay, yeah.
I had most of a chocolate bar, and I walk into this movie expecting it to be pretty decent based on the cast and the subject matter. And we sit down, and it's not like I'm blasted out of my mind, but I am just gone enough that the fact that this movie primarily takes place in Minneapolis, Chicago, and Los Angeles. I was born in Minneapolis. My parents are from Chicago, where most of my family lives, and I live in Los Angeles. This movie was made specifically to terrify me. Yeah, that was another one where it was like I can't tell you like a lot of specifics, but No, but it was like the reason I can rewatch cinema is because like I retain bits of like I retain images, I retain maybe little arcs, I retain emotional experiences that I had based on what had happened. And so like with Contagion, it was just I remember when they're in Minneapolis, I don't know that I'd ever seen Minneapolis depicted quite like that. Like it felt like the Minneapolis I knew. Like the Matt Damon performance is kind of like, I mean, you could argue who's the core character, but to me, like he's the core of the movie. That just the way that the pandemic goes, you're like, oh my god, this is exactly how it would happen. Dun, 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 it's how it happened. But it was just an experience, man. But so like that's why I can rewatch things. Whereas like my father, before he developed dementia, like if he saw something, he just remembered it. If he rewatched something, that was the highest compliment he could pay.
Wow.
Because he just didn't need to. So yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So like I can't tell you a lot of the specifics about it, but like I remember how dickish is it Jude Law? It's Jude Law, right?
No, I've never seen it. I've been avoiding.
Oh, okay. I'm not mad at you, especially right now. but like so I think it's Jude Law, and he's like this Joe Rogan podcasty type, but he's like Alex Jones about the way that he is out there about it.
Okay.
And it's just like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But like he's so like the performance is just so good because he manages to pull you into him in a way that at times you're like, oh yeah, no, you're cool, and then he just turns on a dime, and you're like, oh no, fuck this guy. Anyway, like working like I have been, it afforded me the opportunity to pick up a couple of things that I had my eye on for a while, like Shout Factory, right?
Yeah. Why do I know that? What is that?
They're like Criterion for genre. And then and then they have Scream Factory, which is just the horror genre for them. Like I pre-ordered like the 13 Ghosts remake. Have you ever seen that?
The one with Tony Shalhoub?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's I love that one.
Yeah, it's great,
so
man.
Bad good. You know, I mean, it's just
and I get that, but at the same time, like when I discovered it, like it was the opposite of bad, because like I was like 15 or 16, my parents had just taken off the reins,
perfect,
and I was like, oh my god,
yeah, it would be like the greatest movie. I would have told everybody at school, I think I saw the greatest movie ever.
Right?
Yeah, it's that kind of movie. Yeah,
and then like the makeup, the practical makeup in that movie.
Yeah, it's really really great.
Like I can't wait to see that HD restoration. Yeah, it's good times, man.
And hope yeah. You always wonder, like, are the practical effects going to hold up to the HD? You know, because like sometimes I'd be like, there's a reason they shoot the things pretty quickly and at a glance and moving the cameras, because you don't really want people lingering on the practical effect.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
So I mean, like, okay, so like outside of genre, like what are some of the like films that have affected you the most? I mean, I say outside of genre, outside of horror, because that's where we've been centralizing all of this.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm actually probably more affected by stuff outside the genre, because I only got into horror like when I don't know, like maybe 7 or 8 years ago, you know. And I grew up like in the 80s. I was classic, you know. All those came out, you know, in the late 70s and 80s, and I never saw any. Like I never saw Halloween. I think I saw Nightmare on Elm Street, but I was kind of too scared to see a lot of those other ones. And it wasn't until my daughter was getting into horror, and she was like, "Oh, Dad, you got to watch this. You got to watch this. You know, I'm going to give you a list. You're going to watch these, you know." And so she kind of educated me on them, and that's when I started writing them. You know, I went to see Cabin in the Woods with her.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I went to see. We saw a late showing. We were the only people in the theater of the Evil Dead remake.
Yes, I went to a midnight of that one. Yes.
And we saw, like, it started at 10 or something like that. And I remember walking, and she's such a huge fan of the original and all that. And I remember walking down the hallway with her afterwards, and she was just smiling. She's going, "I'm just so happy with that. I'm so pleased with that." You know, because she's such a fan. She didn't want to see it done poorly. And it's just like, the third act in that movie is just off the
Oh,
hook.
yeah, when the rains come up, and then again, the practical effects.
Rain
Like,
and
so much of that was practical.
The soundtrack.
The sinew that's coming off that arm that's falling off. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and then that just siren that kicks in the soundtrack. That it's just like, what's happening?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an assault. It's really wonderful.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, I really wish they would have given him a sequel. But I heard Fede Alvarez is actually, I don't know, like he was. Did they finish shooting his Texas Chainsaw? He was working on a Texas Chainsaw reboot. So okay. like that level of energy from Evil Dead to Evil Dead, like what's he gonna do with Texas Chainsaw?
The only other one I saw was that the one about the blind guy.
Don't Breathe. It's amazing. Yes.
What is it?
Don't Breathe.
Yeah. Don't Breathe. Yeah. Yeah. Really terrific. I mean, the reveal I didn't dig that much. In the,
you mean the basement thing?
The stuff that's happening in the basement, I didn't.
Yeah, the basement thing. Yeah, that was more than a little weird.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I appreciated that, like, as weird as that was, he, in his brain, was justified because he's like, I'm not a rapist.
Yeah. I have a hard time with that kind of stuff sometimes.
Okay. So you've never gone down like any of the rape revenge stuff, like I Spit on Your Grave or any of that?
Not really, but what's weird is like Butcher Holler, this thing I wrote it's not rape revenge, but the producers I remember who had it optioned for a while were like, it's a little rapey in this part. Can we because it's the whole thing takes place like in the Appalachians. And the way, and there's a big metaphor drawn between the abuse of these two sisters and the quote unquote rape of the land from the coal industry. And so I build up this whole like mythology with this church, the Church of the Mountain, so there's almost kind of an environmental thing to what they're doing. And so I saying that I can't watch that kind of stuff, but yet I wrote something that's kind of like that. Yeah, I guess that's kind of two-faced, but I tend to stay away from those.
No, it's all good, man. But along similar to what you just said, like, so cut way back. I went to Catholic school up until like 7th grade, and so in 5th grade we're all doing the yearbook, and it comes to the what if page, and it was like I was in a group of like 5 or 6. And 2 or 3 of the girls looked at each other, and one of them said, wouldn't it be hilarious if Mike worked in horror movies? And I was so personally offended that anyone would suggest that I would like a horror movie that I insisted they remove it from the page. Cut to me.
That's one. I wonder if that planted a seed in your head somehow.
Maybe.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I just love that. Even then, they were like, look at this goody 2 shoes.
Right. Well, that's, I work with a guy who's a really Christian guy, and Hereditary really messed him up.
Okay.
Well, I think it's because the way he put it, he goes, I believe in God, but you can't believe in God without believing in the other part. Mm-hmm. And so it's the other part that's pretty prevalent in, it's not Suzu, but it's one of his cousins.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
And so it affected him in a real significant. And he has night terrors. He gets sleep paralysis at times.
Oh no!
Oh my God! This happened to me about a week ago.
Okay.
It's the most terrifying thing that's ever happened to me, and it lasted 2 seconds probably. No, I went to bed. I'm working on a pretty big project, and I was up till like midnight writing this screenplay or the treatment. And
can you tell me? I'll cut the fuck out of it, I swear. But can you tell me?
I can. Yeah. It's for a pretty good sized production company. And like back in February, so I have a friend who he wrote and directed Imperium. It came out in 2015. Daniel Radcliffe, undercover FBI agent.
Yes, I haven't watched it, but I know it. Yeah, no, it's on my list. It's literally on one of my queues.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool, really cool story. My friend Dan Augustus wrote and directed it. he bought the life rights to Mike German, who was an FBI agent. And this is his actual like story that actually really happened.
Okay.
And the whole thing is, I mean, Radcliffe never touches a gun in it. I mean, it's FBI agent undercover. So it's that kind of story. But I did some.
Is this the one? Is this the one where like does he go undercover with like an Aryan Brotherhood? Is that this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
head Shea, you know, wears the Doc Martens and all that.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, I've done some. I did some script consulting on that project on his script. I gave him feedback while he's developing the script and stuff. And so he's always been a real big fan of my work, Dan Augustus. And so he's now working at this medium-sized or big-sized production company. And they have a number of projects that they're trying to get moving. And they have one that they really want to do. And they had a screenwriter from the UK that they kind of liked his treatment, but they didn't like it. And so he kicked all the material into me and said, shoot us a treatment. Give us your take on it. And so I spent about a month just like poring over the treatment and stuff. It's without going into too much detail, it's a historical action movie.
Okay.
5th century kind of thing in India and China and stuff. You know? Okay. Really cool. And stuff I know nothing about. And so I did a lot of research. But anyway, I pitched my take on it, and they ate it up. I crushed it, and so they gave me the gig. And so now I'm developing more like a 35-40 page, pretty detailed treatment, and then I'm going to work on the screenplay. So anyway, I was up late doing that, and I go to bed, and about 1 o'clock in the morning, I wake up, and right above us is a ceiling fan. At night, you know, it's just the shape of 5 paddles, right, of the fan.
Right.
And I think what happened, I think my eyes opened before I woke up. So I was bringing in an image, but I was still in dreamland. And the paddles turned into a shadow, which crawled off the wall, off the ceiling, onto the floor, and scurried out of the room.
No. Oh my God, that's no.
And I tried to scream, and I couldn't scream because I was asleep still. And I think it probably came out like,
yeah,
something
I
like
woke
that.
myself up doing that once or twice.
Oh man! And I was literally the next night I was terrified to go to sleep. And so the next night, what I did, so I had my sleepy time tea, melatonin,
Okay.
A couple shots of rye,
Right.
a slug of NyQuil.
Okay.
and 2 like sleeping pills. So I was terrified. I was so terrified. I slept well.
Well, apparently.
But yeah, I
woke up all right.
Well, I mean, my biggest fear is not my biggest fear, but in 1 year I met not only the guy I work with, but another guy at my local comic book shop. He gets night terrors, you know, and it seems like the absolute scariest thing in the world to have.
Yeah.
Like sleep paralysis night terrors, you know.
No, honestly, there are a couple of movies that came out like all of a sudden there's like 3 Cinderella movies and like 14 whatever movies that are all coming out at the same time. There were a couple of movies that came out about sleep paralysis, and every one of them I was like, I think this is the kind of horror movie that I can't watch. I because it's a little too plausible. I don't care for it.
None of that in Dreamcatcher. A lot of that stuff got cut just for time's sake, you know. But that was kind of actually pretty much one of the initial impetuses for the direction we took with it, was kind of going a sleep paralysis angle. And if we get to do the sequel, there'll be some of that in the sequel as well.
It's one of those things, man. It hasn't been used all that much, so you do it right, and it's definitely going to stand out.
It's the remarkable similarities between the stories that people tell. You know,
oh, yeah.
A gray or black shadow figure that comes towards them is very common. You know, trying to scream. You know, the one guy at the comic book shop was like, his was the shadow person coming at him with a knife, and his friends were in the other room, or he would dream that it was his friends with the knives, and he could hear them outside the door plotting to kill him.
Dude, no, that's awful.
Isn't that horrible? And the thing is, he's the guy at the comic. They're both the nicest people in the world. They're
right, exactly.
They're kind and sweet, and karma should not be doing this to them.
Oh, it's so rude. Why would you do this to me?
The scariest thing I ever saw in my life as a kid was In Cold Blood.
Okay.
The
original one with Robert, what's his face, right?
Robert Blake.
Yeah.
Because the actual murders took place like 2 hours from where I grew up.
Really?
Like 2 or 3 hours. Yeah, I grew up in Kansas, and this took place out in western Kansas, out in Holton or somewhere like that. And just the thought that two people would go to a farmhouse and kill everybody in there for $40 and a pair of binoculars. Because they thought there was they thought he was a rich old farmer with a safe and stuff or whatever. But to me, I remember watching that on New Year's Eve with my best friend, and my mom and dad were up at a New Year's Eve party on the Army base at Fort Riley, and so we stayed up and watched that, and should not have.
Should not have, yeah. For me, there's two, and one of them is actually a Shriekfest film. So the first one, Cannibal Holocaust. I actually didn't even see it until, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. And I sit down knowing what it is, and it's okay. So the have you seen it?
No, I've seen the title 1,000 times though.
Okay.
Yeah.
So without getting like way too deep on it or whatever, like, are you at least familiar with some of the craziness about it?
Yeah,
like the animal violence, and how like there was a court case about like, this is real, you need to show us the people you didn't kill or we're going to arrest you.
Okay, right.
Stuff like that. So the way the movie starts is to me it's the truest example of a found footage, because it's a movie about people finding this footage and then trying to cut together a documentary that the crew was there to film. Okay. And this crew goes down to like the Amazon to film a documentary about like lost people, and then they disappear. And the movie opens with, we found the footage, now we're going to watch it together and decide what to do. And it starts pretty rote, in as much as white people going into a not white place trying to learn about the natives, and like they're not intensely dislikable in any way yet. They're just like, why are you like, fucking leave them alone? All right, whatever, let's see what happens. They're really in the jungle, it looks really cool, and it just devolves into this, we're going to be big and white and right. And there's a rape at one point that the woman, to me, even is implicit in, because like she doesn't participate in the thing, but she literally says nothing. She doesn't look distressed, really. She just lets it happen. So all these, and so by the time all of the crazy comeuppance happens, I'm like, you all deserve it. I don't care. And if that makes me a bad person, whatever. But like, the effects are really cool, but like I actually had to snargle through the animal violence because I didn't want to watch that, and it was what kept me from watching it for so long, because I kept telling myself I'd get the animal violence edited version, but I wasn't going to give them $40 so that I could watch that thing.
Okay.
And it was just like I appreciate the fact that it was able to, I mean, you see my face, like you see that it gets this out of me just talking about it. And so like, I'm like, good the fuck on you for making something that did that to me, but no. And maybe at some point down the road, I'll watch it again. I'm pretty sure I will, but man, I felt unclean. I felt unclean watching that movie.
I felt that way with Boogie Nights.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
Shower.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think my thing with Boogie Nights, the reason that I kind of like love that movie is kind of the same reason that and Fluid Master Shots are one of my favorite things on the planet. So the fact that every chapter of that film opens or closes with a Fluid Master, I'm just down. Like similarly, like I know a bunch of people that can only watch Requiem for a Dream one time, and I've seen that movie like a bunch of times. And what's interesting is it never affected me on a level that made me even close to tears until the last time I watched it, which is the first time my girlfriend had seen it. And it was, I was like I had a little to drink, I had a little to smoke, and it was another, like, I had never done that while watching the movie before either. And even though the content, have you seen it?
Oh, long time ago. Yeah.
Okay. So even though the content is just all this dark, all this crazy, all this depression, depravity, the filmmaking of it is so interesting to me that I can go back to it again and again and again and again. And because I know that about myself, I purposely tried to watch it for the story this time. And I actually became involved. And there was the first thing that made me tear up was it was at one point when everybody was happy, because I knew, I was like, oh, you're all so genuinely happy. This is not going to end well for anybody. And then the thing that almost brought me to tears a couple times that did this time is the Barkin story just really gets to me. And when they start like ECT on her, I know a little bit about what ECT does to you. And I'm just like, no.
I get that way with what you're talking about when they're happy and stuff. Whenever when I would teach a Death of a Salesman for class.
Yeah.
And you get to the middle of the play and they're like, oh, it's looking up. Everything's looking up. And it's like, oh, no.
Sure it is. Yeah.
You're going to be dead in like 50 minutes.
So, and the other movie is actually, it was at Shriekfest. It was the first year that she let me do carpet coverage. So I want to say it was 16. It's a movie called The Glass Coffin.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It takes
Shriekfest quite a while then, right?
The first year, I wanted to be prepared, so I asked her, I was like, anything that you can give me a link to that's prudent for you to do so, please do. I'll watch it so that I can have more than what's your movie about type questions. And so I saw almost all the features that year, and one of them was this movie called The Glass Coffin. I believe it's a Spanish from Spain film. It's about a female television personality. I want to say a news person, but I could be misremembering. And almost the entire film takes place in a limo. She gets a phone call, and it becomes kind of like phone booth, where like she has to stay in there for some weird reason. But just the content, and like there's a rape, and and so like I think she programmed it like Saturday night, or like Saturday after, like it was the last, or like Saturday afternoon. Anyway, but so I'm outside of the screening room for it. She's like, "Oh, you're not gonna go watch the movie?" And I was like, "No, like I already." She's like, "Oh yeah, you already saw them all." And I was like, "Yeah, but I've rewatched almost all of them, but like." And then I just told her like how it affected me, and I was like, I can't do that to myself again right now. And she was like, "No, I get that. Like that was like, I don't know if you talked to Denise much, like one-on-one, but she says she always tries to program one thing to make sure she'll get walkouts, and that was the movie that year that she was certain to get walkouts.
Yeah. I think the year I went, maybe the movie was either Sick for Toys, which I actually I like that.
I loved Sick for Toys.
Yeah, I thought the movie itself was really great, and I thought the acting was.
The performances were next level, dude. Yeah,
really terrific. Like professionals, like studio quality-ish, you know.
Oh yeah.
I think that and Echoes of Fear, like a lot. They were my favorites of the ones I saw.
Echoes was great. Yeah.
There was one with, was it called Alive or something, where a guy and a girl are being tortured by some mad doctor in a former asylum.
Yes. I don't remember if it was called Alive, but I remember the movie. Yes.
It's not called Alive, but that's the idea.
Yeah. Because it was Angus McFadden, Angus McFadden, the guy from the Saw franchise. Yeah.
That might have been the walkout one. I don't know, or maybe Sick for Toys. I don't know.
Sick for Toys was definitely not family friendly.
No,
you thought it was gonna go one way. You were certain it was gonna go one way, and then it just took a left.
But hey, great talking to you.
Right on, man. All right, good times. Thanks for doing this, and yeah, man. We'll have to try to do it again sometime, man.
Yeah, and nice to kind of finally meet you and get to actually talk to you, since I was probably too shy to talk to you 2 years ago.
I talked to so many people, like it's kind of nuts, but I want to say we definitely had like at least a conversation.
I remember you on like the red carpet and like talking. I probably went right by you, and you probably even asked a question, and I probably mumbled something, and then went on my way. You know.
All right, man. All right, man. Good times. Well, have a good night. We'll talk again soon.
All right, take care of yourself.